Hello everyone, welcome to another video on the channel and welcome to another Gran Turismo 7 opinion piece. In this video we're going to take a look at artificial intelligence, or AI for short. I'm going to ask ourselves, is there any hope for having good AI within Gran Turismo 7? Now, AI in Gran Turismo games in general has always been pretty poor. GT Sport is slightly better than some of the previous games, but it's by no means perfect and definitely needs some work. For Gran Turismo 7, having a big focus on the single player game for myself personally, to make that kind of enticing, to make me want to play the single player game, then the game's going to have pretty good AI to make the actual races worthwhile. And from what I've seen in Gran Turismo Sport so far, it's going to have to improve slightly upon that. Now, the footage that we are looking at the moment is from the recent Daytona road course reveal. It shows a Porsche RSR in Group 3 racing around, doing one lap around the track, up against some other Group 3 cars, and this video has kind of, from what I've seen certainly on some Discord channels that I'm a member of and Gran Turismo Planet, the kind of opinion is slightly split as into whether this video reveals the AI to be improved upon GT Sport or whether it is just the same as GT Sport. My personal opinion is that it's very hard to actually make a judgment. It's one lap of the track, one lap between the cars here. We don't know how this race has been set up. I know when you set up a Group 3 race within GT Sport that the cars are not BOP'd or balanced of performance, so therefore it can be a big disparity in the performance of the cars. That's definitely something we need to see change for Gran Turismo 7 if we're going to be able to set up custom races. And the fact that our Porsche just blast past a Mercedes and a Lamborghini towards the end of the lap certainly suggests that the AI here are not on the hardest setting or the quickest setting, because again, in GT Sport, if the cars are kind of at the same balance of performance, then the AI car is going to at least drive the car at full throttle down the straight. So the jury is out on that one. What I'm going to try and do in this video though is I'm going to try and use GT Sport to kind of try and show you that whilst the AI in GT Sport is far from perfect and certainly has some significant flaws, with just a little bit of tweaking in certain areas, there is actually hope to kind of maybe get some competitive AI and just have AI that is just a little bit better to race against. Now, when you set up an AI race in Gran Turismo Sport, there is some things you really do need to remember. One, if you have like a race within Group 3 or Group 4, the cars are not BOP'd. That means that every car in the track is just set up at 100% power and 100% weight, which means there can be very significant differences between how the cars perform because they're not BOP'd. So the best way to get an AI race in Gran Turismo Sport is to actually have a one-make race and then use your car non-bopped. So for example, in this race here, we're in the Renault RS01 and we are racing 19 other Renault RS01s around Interlagos with our car at the exact same horsepower and the exact same weight as them. Now, some other things that you can also do to make sure that they are a slightly more level playing field is that in race cars, by default in Gran Turismo Sport, the AI cars will only ever use hard tyres, so make sure you're at least using the same compound of tyres as them, or give yourself a slightly worse compound of tyre to try and bring your speed maybe down towards theirs. So for example, I'm actually using intermediate tyres on the front of my car because I know if I use hard tyres, I'm going to be so much faster than the AI cars that, you know, it's not going to be particularly competitive. The other thing I also use is weak ABS to just kind of add a couple of attempts onto my lap time, and probably the most significant one is I also use heavy damage as well. So I have to actually respect these AI cars as I am overtaking them, just to kind of, you know, I can't just kind of dive past them and barge past them, or I shall pick up some damage in the car and that will slow the car down. So yeah, whenever I set up an AI race like this, I kind of have to make some, you know, manipulate the race a little bit, which is not really that much different to maybe something like an ACC, when you can kind of choose the aggression of the AI cars or the speed with using the sliders from 0 to 100. Obviously in Gran Turismo Sport we don't have that, we just have beginner, amateur and professional, and even on professional they're not especially fast. So with just a little bit of manipulation of the settings, you can kind of even the playing field between your car and their car down to a much closer level. So with all those settings in place, I set up a 20-minute race here and basically worked my way from the back to the front, and now I'm going to show you some half decent AI behaviour here exhibited during the course of that race. So coming into the last corner here, you can see that we poke our nose up the inside. The AI car just moves a little bit wide to give us room. And come down towards turn number 1 here, we go for the dive down the inside, we go a bit deep, and the AI car is quite happy to take that position back. Nothing groundbreaking, I guess, there so far, but it does get slightly better as we sort of demonstrate these examples. Come down to turn 1, once again we try to go down the outside of the AI, and the AI actually gives us room on the second part of the Senna S. We then cut in front of them, which allows us to make the move. Come down into turn number 4 here, we're going to go for the overtake. AI car tries to hang around the outside. We actually run wide and bump them slightly off the curb, which is the only reason why they kind of had to give that move up. You see that kind of in AI sort of human races as well, that kind of move. So going down the inside again at turn number 1, the AI car though on this occasion is not willing to give up position. Actually keeps the nose in for the second part of the Senna S, forces us to take a compromise line and actually holds on to that position. So we're going to try and fight this position down into turn number 4, and you're going to see the AI car go defensive this time. Nice and early, so we'll try to go down the outside, but they actually still outbrake us. They compromise their line a little bit, which gives us a better exit off turn number 4, and it's going to give us opportunity for a move up into turn number 6 here. I think we do go for the overtake. AI gives us the space on the apex, and finally we get that move made. So that was a nice bit of racing for actually 4 or 5 corners there with the AI car. And if you had that kind of racing up against a human opponent, you'd actually be singing their praises, I think. So I thought that's probably the best example of the AI's behaviour there. So looking for the move down into the last corner, the AI car is having none of that, and runs a slightly wider line and keeps that position. And as we fast forward down towards turn number 3 here, we're going to go for the inside for turn number 4. So just about alongside, we're trying to go for an outbraking manoeuvre here. AI car's going to try and hang around the outside as well, and actually just about keeps the position but just runs slightly wide, puts a wheel on the AstroTurf and loses momentum. So just an example of an AI car going defensive down into turn number 1. So that's kind of just, I put that one in because very often they didn't go defensive into turn number 1, but this driver here decided they did want to go defensive. So coming towards the end of the race, we've got a couple of AI cars battling ahead of us, and we're going to go for a sneaky move down the inside here. Now, just interesting that one, as we went for the move, you've seen the AI car go to turn in and then actually back out of the move. What I found quite interesting about that one is 1 lap later, I went to go for the same move on the next car, and this AI car did not give a monkeys that I was in the inside and just turned into me, which is quite interesting because that again exhibits different behaviour between the AI cars. Some of them are more aggressive than others, some of them give you the space, some of you don't, some go defensive, some don't. So hopefully I've managed to demonstrate to you there that the AI on occasion, not all the time, and I'm certainly not defending their behaviour all the time, but they can actually exhibit some half decent racing behaviour, some awareness, and actually some variety as well. So we did actually go on to win that race fairly comfortably, and not because of being blisteringly quick, because of the biggest fundamental problem with the AI in GT Sport. Now just quickly take a look at my lap times here at the end of the race. I have fastest lap of 1:34.7. Most of my lap times were in the 1:35s and the sort of low 1:36s as I worked my way through the AI cars. Now the non-bopped Renault RS01 is a little bit slower than the bopped version, and with the inclusion of hard tyres, or intermediate tyres at the front, these lap times were, I could probably go a little bit quicker than that. But how does that compare to the lap times of the AI cars? So here's the lap times of P2 here. Now you can see his fastest lap is a 1:35.0, and he actually does a lot of laps within that 1:35 range, but there's outliers. Lap 6, lap 9, lap 13 are all 3 to 4 seconds slower than his quickest lap. That's because, and this is the biggest problem with the AI in Gran Turismo, the cars are fundamentally designed to let you win. So they're programmed to just do random slow laps out of nowhere to allow you to catch up and overtake. And that is easily the biggest problem with the AI. If this car had just done laps in the 1:35 from start to finish, like a consistent race driver would, and all the other drivers are lapping similarly, kind of doing consistent lap times as well, then there's no way in a 20-minute race I'm able to work my way from P20 to P1, and all of a sudden I've got a halfway competitive race against the AI. So bingo. It's there is kind of fundamental problems with the programming that need to be removed, and hopefully that's something they are going to do for Gran Turismo 7. So let's actually take a look at this AI lap that did the 135.0, having just done a 138.4 at the previous lap. Yeah, exactly, there's that problem highlighted straight away. They're not actually too bad throughout the Senate S's, I have to say. This is where we get our first issue as well. They kind of slowed down just a little bit too much for turn 3 here at Brazil, but not too bad. Sometimes, to be honest with you, you actually have to give it a very slight lift when you're driving that corner yourself. So down into turn number 4. Again, their kind of behaviour, the way they kind of sort of tap the brakes a lot, is not very natural, but as long as they're carrying enough speed, it's not too bad. This is the first problem corner here for the AI. They take a very, very strange line. They do this line lap after lap. They go very, very wide here, and then as we go through the middle sector, you can see they're not using all the track either. Certainly not using the full width of the track. So again, just something that could be slightly tweaked. I'm not entirely sure how hard it is to program AI, probably a lot harder than we think, but you can see clearly here that the sort of racing line that the AI cars are sticking to is far from optimal. If you just kind of move them out a little bit wider on those corners to use all the racetrack, then I think even then I'd probably just knock about half a second off their best lap. Again, coming into the last corner here, they move to the middle of the track for no real reason, and again compromise their line through there. But all in all, it's not the worst lap I've ever seen an AI car do. Now, you have to be careful sometimes as well, because they are better at some tracks than others. Obviously more work required at some tracks than others, but a 135.0, we could probably have got into the high 133s if we really wanted to, but again, at least that would kind of give me something to race against. If, you know, starting from P20, I could work my way through the sort of the pack, have a little bit of fun, halfway competitive. I'm not lapping 3-4 seconds a lap quicker than them, and it just looked like it is there. It is possible to make that happen. So in conclusion, is there hope for better AI within Gran Turismo 7? Well, hopefully I managed to kind of demonstrate a couple of things using GT Sport, that the AI in that game is, whilst far from perfect, and I'm not trying to convince you that the AI are brilliant in that game, if you set things up correctly, then they are actually a little bit better than we think. But beyond the kind of behaviour of the cars, there is a fundamental issue with the AI and the fact that they do deliberately slow laps to let you win. Now, that's the biggest thing that needs to be removed from the programming in the AI to kind of make them halfway competitive. Beyond that, they need work on their racing lines as well, as demonstrated when we looked at the AI lap around Interlagos. And yeah, another big thing as well, if we're going to be able to set up custom races, we need to actually have more options available to us in what we can do with the AI cars. For example, if we could start them on medium tyres and then we race them on hard tyres, that would maybe make something, you know, just kind of artificially slow them down in a way that seems natural, if you like. So I'm looking for more options in the custom race as well for when we're able to set up an AI race. But yeah, I think with those 3 things, that would be a good start for PD as well, and then maybe some tweaking on the behaviour. As I hopefully demonstrated, they can actually race somewhat sensibly sometimes, but on the other occasions they are just brain dead. There's no two doubts about that. As I said, I'm not trying to convince you that the AI in GT Sport is good, just try to show that there's maybe a little bit more hope there than you might first think. So yeah, there is hope for the AI in Gran Turismo 7. What I'm not hopeful is that what I'm demonstrating here is going to change from one game to the other. Now, I very much hope I am wrong in that instance. I really do hope that the AI is something that Polyphony Digital have nailed down on to try and make that single player campaign much more desirable to play. Because if I do the first race and AI are just awful, I can't see myself doing a whole lot of the single player stuff. I'm just not, and I think a lot of people are going to be in that same boat. So let's hope that PD have listened to what we said about the AI and are going to try and make changes. We can't really garner too much from this Daytona video. Hopefully in the weeks to come we see some more that can kind of give us a little bit more hope. But, let me know what you think. Have I enlightened you to some things you didn't know about the AI in GT Sport? Have I given you some hope? Let me know what you think in the comments below. Hopefully you've enjoyed this video. If you have, hit that like button, hit that subscribe button if you haven't already, and I shall catch you on the next one. Goodbye now.